Well, she's an amazing woman. She has a background in dentistry, but has really embraced the gut microbiome and been able to kind of connect oral health and gut health. She has a TED talk on the forgotten orifice, which is so important to our gut microbiome. And she has a wonderful podcast called Vitality Made Simple. And she really covers a lot of interesting topics and just broad subject matter as it relates to our overall health and empowering ourselves to take back our health. So welcome, Debbie. We're so glad to have you tonight, and she's got a presentation for us.
Hey, thank you, Martha. I feel like I'm just with a group of friends. I'm just sending you all a hug from Oklahoma. I've got an Oklahoma shirt on here. It's Oklahoma. Anyway, so it's great to be here. Thank you for that generous introduction. So we're going to talk about that vitality takes guts. And I think Bridget's going to do my slides for me. Thank you, Bridget. Thank you all for this opportunity. Next slide, please. And this just says that I paid for the slides. I needed to. Next slide, please.
Oop, it's not advancing, Bridget.
Well, you all know that I love to make fun of normal because if you look around, you really don't want to be normal. Normal is really just whatever is typical in a society at the time. It's whatever the regular pattern is. And normal in our world right now is really dehydrated, irritated, constipated, frustrated, overscheduled, overstimulated, undernourished, underrested, and totally stressed out. And normal is totally inflamed. And you all can really attest to that. It's changed quite a bit in my 65 years. And I think everybody's kind of starting to notice that they don't want to be like everybody else. Next slide, please. So I want to go back in history and tell you about two of my favorite dead guys. Of course, you probably recognize Louis Pasteur. You know, he is the father of the germ theory. Well, on the right, we have Antoine Béchamp, and you don't hear as much about him, but they were both very smart French scientists, and but they were bitter rivals. Well, you know that Dr. Pasteur was really made quite famous for the germ theory and you know, helping us learn about germs and lots of important things, but to be very scared of the germ. In his opinion, his not so humble opinion, actually, he felt like everything had a germ attached to it. And it was like, be afraid of the germ, be afraid of the germ. Whereas Dr. Béchamp was like, well, he didn't deny that, you know, the air might have germs or that there were germs to worry about. But he said, if you're rested, if you're hydrated, if your gut's healthy, if you have good relationships, then you don't have to worry about the germ. He really got to be known for the terrain theory. You know, so they went head to head, and Dr. Béchamp just kind of faded into the woodwork. And I think a good analogy of the germ theory versus the terrain theory is kind of about mosquitoes. We're getting into mosquito season, and you know, mosquitoes seek the stagnant water, but mosquitoes don't make the water stagnant. So that's kind of the problem that they were addressing. Dr. Pasteur thought, oh, you know, be scared, be scared, be scared. And Dr. Béchamp was like, no, let's not be so scared, and let's not jump to conclusions when it comes to germs. Next slide, please. But it comes down to health span versus lifespan. Like to call health span vitality span, because those are the years that you still feel like, running and playing. You get to still reach for your dreams. You're not burdened with doctor visits. What hurt, thinking about what hurts today. I started noticing this in my dental practice probably about 10 years in. So probably about 1995, I started noticing that people were taking more and more medications. They had more and more doctors. They would say, be at the front trying to schedule a dental visit. And they'd be like, well, that's my cardiology visit, or that's my kidney doctor, or that's my my big toe doctor. I mean, they just had all these different doctors, and people would retire. And instead of retiring to something fun to get to do what they had saved money for, they started really just collecting prescriptions and going to a lot of different doctors. So I think it's so key to be looking at health, not just lifespan, but also health span or vitality span, and to be thinking about why you want that to be longer. The average lifespan is still about 79 years in the United States, but the average health span is only about 63 to 66 years. It's actually lower than it is on this slide. It's dropping quite a bit. People are getting sicker and sicker at younger and younger ages. Next slide, please. And, I sort of talked about all these different doctors. We've siloed medical care. This is not news to you all. I'm preaching to the choir. And because I so respect your health IQ, all of you listeners. You would not be with Martha if you were not, in the A+ range, the extra credit range, when it comes to functional medicine and to health. Now, but this is what most people experience. And even I find that when I call a cardiologist or I call an oncologist, then I'm greeted with, well, aren't you a dentist? Why are you calling me? Why? And so that's what made me start digging into research. And when I did, I found that there's tons of research. It's global research. It's current research. It's peer reviewed. It's prospective studies. It's not just some observational thing. I mean, everything in our body is so tied together, and we have to start connecting all of this, and that's where the math came in. So that sent me back to school, and it's just been a super fun journey to see how much the oral microbiome actually impacts all parts of the body, including the gut microbiome. Next slide, please. Now, of course, we know that these are diseases of affluence. These are diseases of modern lifestyle. Although we know our environment's super different than it used to be, but our physiological needs are the same. I call it living by design. If we look at, I was thinking today, if we look at Grandma Moses, she was pretty amazing. She lived to be 101 and started her painting career at 79. What her needs were and what our needs were are the same, but very, very different environment, especially significant for little kids who are eating all this processed food, breathing all these toxins, in all this stress from birth. It's such a big deal. So we know that's really the good news, though, because when it's a disease of civilization, of affluence, of lifestyle, then we have more power to change it. Very, very different. Very few diseases are actually genetically based. We still can even change that through the whole epigenetic process. Next slide, please. And it all comes down to inflammation, because that's what causes us to age faster. That's inflammaging. I love that term. And as I'll show you, it's the common element among all things. And it really does start in the mouth. Again, that's good news for everybody, because I'm going to show you some easy techniques where you can help keep this inflammation at bay. So we want to we want to live younger. We want to live naturally. We want to not be scared of aging, but we don't want this inflammation to speed everything up. And next slide, please. We're Boy Scouters and spent lots of time out in the woods, and I think inflammation is so well described by a campfire and a wildfire. We need fire, we need inflammation. Inflammation protects our bodies, and it's very much like the difference in a campfire and a wildfire. Campfire has purpose. You sit around the campfire and you have better relationships, and you maybe cook food and you stay warm. It draws people together. It keeps the bugs away. It's just lots of fun. But a wildfire is very different. It's very destructive. You don't always know where it starts, but it's just insidious and moving. It drives people away. It kills animals. It destroys everything in its path. Both are fire. Sometimes with the wildfire, you think you have it out. With a campfire, it's contained. When you have it out. One protects and the other destroys. Very, very simple. Very, very similar to inflammation. So, as you see a lot of medicines, they totally squelch inflammation, and then somebody has something little happen and they're super sick. So we want to nurture our body's natural ability to withstand germs. Next slide, please. So here's basically the digestive system. So often when we think about digestion, we just see the guts of it. We don't start north, but so much of digestion starts in the mouth, not just with chewing, but with when the saliva is healthy, we have enzymes that break food down, and so that often gets overlooked. And as you'll see, the bacteria in the mouth can either really make us or break us when it comes to digesting our food, and when it comes to glucose control, when it comes to insulin control. It's super, super important. Next slide, please. And of course, it goes back to with the digestion, so many things changed when we got penicillin in 1928, and that was a great development. But of course, a lot of that's when our health started to decline. Now, bleeding gums are really the canary in the coal mine. In the old days, coal miners would take a canary in a cage down deep into the mines to monitor their air quality. They knew that as long as the canary was singing, then they had enough fresh air. If they saw, unfortunately, this little bird croaked, then something's wrong, and they needed to get out of there. They needed to get up because it obviously there were problems. The canary was an early sign. Now, I want to make it clear that bleeding gums are normal. They are absolutely normal, just like we talked about normal in the previous slide. And I'm sure that so many of you have gone to the dentist and you've been told, oh, you have a little bleeding, it's normal. I wish every single patient was like you, because it's sort of graded on the curve. So really, if you take anything away tonight, it's that bleeding gums are an early sign, maybe a late sign in some cases, actually, of chronic inflammation. And that is going to absolutely impact your gut, either, negatively. And when your gums are healthy, then anything like when you're taking Sugar Shift, when you're taking all the other good probiotics that BiotiQuest offers, they're going to work better when you don't have this chronic inflammation to deal with. Next slide, please. Now, my world changed. I started, seeing all these changes in my patients, started going to some classes. In 2010, I went to a cardiology class. It was a vascular inflammation class. And these tests, these oral DNA tests, had just been launched. Martha had mentioned that she listened to a podcast that I was a couple of weeks ago with Ron McGlennon. He was actually the developer of this particular test. And so I've been using it since about November of 2010. Now, what's so wonderful, and there's more tests now. I like the bristle test too because it's just so user friendly to do at home. But from a clinician standpoint, through the years, I've been able to see these different bacteria associated with specific ailments in the body. I mean, it's been amazing. And I at first, when they first came out, we really just thought about the bacteria in the far left column. Those, although one's purple, those are called red. Those are red complex bacteria. Basically, you hardly ever see the purple one. This test is kind of unusual, but they're highly infectious. They're transmissible, transkissable, and so that's really all we worried about. We didn't know yet that we should be concerned about this Fusobacterium nucleatum. That's the one, the orange one in the middle area that is the tallest. Now, this test, I took it home and started testing my patients, and sure enough, it correlated with so many things that I saw on their health history, these chronic inflammatory diseases that were increasing so greatly. And I saw that people that were dealing with type 2 diabetes pretty much always had high bacterial counts and had bleeding gums. Now, I still was more focused on those red complex, not knowing that Fusobacterium was, one critter we really needed to deal with. Now, the nice thing about these new tests is that they look for the DNA of these bacteria. So therefore, it's not. We didn't have the problems, the culture dependent problems of trying to, grab these bacteria and stabilize them and look at them under the microscope. We could really get a clear picture, and sample collection was easy. We didn't, there was no blood to draw. It was just super, super simple. And we really thought that like the transmissible, transkissable were in the far left column, the purple one and the red ones. There's another red one that this particular person didn't have, Porphyromonas gingivalis. I'm sure you all have heard a lot about that. It's the bacteria that's pretty close to being causal for memory loss. But nevertheless, the newest research is telling us that Fusobacterium may have an element of transmissibility. It's just pretty new, and I think the jury's still out. For sure, it's transmissible with bite wounds. So avoid getting bitten by anybody who has Fusobacterium. Would be a good idea. But this is a super test, and I'm really thankful for it. It just really changed the trajectory of my interest. It made practice so much more interesting. In dentistry, we're very, very trained as carpenters, and I like that. But that, this is just fascinating because you can see people get well when you really change their oral microbiome. It's really funny when our daughter was in kindergarten, she was asked, what does your mama do? And she said, well, she's a laundry lady and she fixes teeth. And, that was just so accurate because mostly I was a laundry lady. But now, it's so exciting with the current research coming out showing how these oral bacteria start in the mouth, but they translocate to other areas of the body. And the good news is that we can easily find out what's happening in the mouth, and we can easily treat this. This is a lot, a lot easier to treat than other areas of the body. So I want to just present some research for you, and I try to update the research on my website monthly. So I'll add all of these studies to my website, just a tab this research, and they ought to be up there by April 1st. So if you want to read them, because there's some good studies, and there's so many others that I wanted to add, but we'd be here all night. So next slide, please. Now this is a research paper from 2022, and I give this to a lot of patients and physicians who are interested and want to understand that, this Fusobacterium nucleatum, it really matters. And you all have probably heard me talk about it as the mother-in-law bacteria. It's a super interesting bacteria because it's a commensal, and it's a gram-negative raw. The name kind of describes the shape. Martha would know way more about that than I do. And I'm a clinician, not a microbiologist. But super interesting. Fusobacterium is like a mother-in-law, because as a commensal, when it's at a low level, when it's just, kind of minding its own business and maybe taking a broom and sweeping the floor and making things better, it is a beneficial bacteria. Like your mother-in-law is beneficial when she has a broom in her hand. Now, when she starts moving things around in your pantry or giving you unsolicited advice or moving in, then she becomes a nuisance. And that's what happens with Fusobacterium nucleatum. When it overgrows, it is a problem. And it's not just a little bit of a problem, folks. It is a huge problem. And you're going to see that. Every day I'm amazed at how much influence it has when it overgrows. So this is a super research paper. It talks about that that Fusobacterium produces adhesins, and these adhesins are sort of a bridge between it and bad bacteria. So it can make the bad bacteria really, worse. It just makes the bad boy worse. And it can increase the invasion of other pathogens. So it sort of prompts things. It's just the bad kid in class that makes things worse. This is a great research paper, though, because it's really Germany, France, China, the US, Switzerland. There's a lot of different great researchers here that contributed to this excellent article. It's a really good overview of Fusobacterium nucleatum. Next slide, please. Now, this is a case that I would say was normal. Before I started looking at the oral microbiome from the lens of what is happening in the entire body, this person would have come in and they would have gotten just a regular teeth cleaning that took 45 minutes or an hour. It would have been, oh, you look great, how are your kids, were you going on vacation? I wouldn't have even been thinking systemic health. But this particular patient was referred by a physician, and the physician said, Debbie, I'm afraid she's got cancer. Her C-reactive protein is 18.1. And, we want our C-reactive protein to be below 1. Normal, when you look at a lab test, it's going to say 3 or less. But really optimal is what we want. You're part of the Sugar Shift Challenge because you want optimal. You want a long vitality span. And so that's the lens we're going to use to look at this. We did an oral DNA test. I need to insert it. I've got to dig it out. But she had moderate levels of bacteria, not super high, really. But in looking at her mouth, she kind of looks like everybody else that comes in for a 6-month cleaning. But you can see that we did a deep cleaning on her, and she had lots of bleeding. We used a laser. We did not use antibiotics. Now, based on the levels of her Fusobacterium, I probably would have maybe used some metronidazole, some Flagyl. At that point, we didn't have a stool test to equate with this. Now we do a stool test, and we can see, what Fusobacterium is in the gut. We can see if it's colonized in the gut. Tests really have just started looking at that in the last probably 3 years, maybe 4 years. This was 2013, this particular case. So anyway, we cleaned her up, and I'll show you her blood test in just a couple of minutes. It was pretty astounding. And here in Oklahoma City, we all just started thinking, okay, there's more to this. She didn't have to go through intense cancer screening. She everything, she started feeling better from a simple, deep cleaning. I mean, a very thorough cleaning and laser treatment. So don't be fooled by normal, because normal can really be tricky when it comes to your systemic health. Next slide, please. Well, you always want to go back and think, why do you want to feel good? Why, I'm sure you guys have really figured out your why. I think it comes down to memory, mood, and mobility. It and I want to make it clear that what happens in your mouth is affecting all three of those. It's affecting memory. Oh my goodness, I could tell you stories and stories. It's affecting mood. I'm seeing that all the time now because there's so much anxiety and depression, and it absolutely impacts mobility. Next slide, please. And of course, the blood doesn't lie. This was from 2013. On the left, you'll see her original panel, just basic blood test. 18.1 was her C-reactive protein. Now, this was a functional medicine doctor, so we were looking at it from optimal, and it came down to 2.9 after this cleaning. But what was very remarkable from our standpoint is that so many things shifted. I mean, everything got better. I think one little thing didn't get better, but overall, just wow, so many things in the red zone, is corrected to the yellow zone. There's more in the green zone after that deep cleaning, after getting her oral microbiome healthier, and without antibiotics. So it was pretty astounding, and that's when I kind of jumped off the cliff and started really going to school, started A4M and all, to try to figure it out, because I don't know that I've cracked the code yet, but oh my goodness, I'm working on it. It's just so exciting. Next slide, please. Now, you all know leaky gut. You've seen this picture probably in so many different lectures, but when you talk to your friends, I think, they hear leaky gut and they just like, oh, leaky gut. They don't really get it. It's a good picture to have, though. And I think it's good to kind of do a little demo and tell them that when the gut's leaky, things are getting in that shouldn't be there. And what should be getting in is all inflamed, and it's just not absorbing correctly. So, as what we see now, the number, like the readings on the GI map, and we can look at zonulin. And zonulin is a very direct measure of leaky gut, and we see it correct with pretty simple procedures that get the oral microbiome healthier. Next slide, please. Well, we know health starts in the gut, but really the gut starts in the mouth. So hopefully you'll find a dentist that will really address this, because in dentistry, we're moving that direction, and there's a lot of us working on it, but we're trained to look at teeth, and really the teeth are the last to go. When we're talking about the oral microbiome as related to the gut microbiome, as related to systemic health, you're going to take your teeth to glory probably, but all the other parts of your body are going to be having a lot of problems. I still get amazed by how much influence the oral microbiome has. Next slide, please. Here are a couple of other research studies. The oral cavity has about 700 species of bacteria, fungi, viruses, protozoa. Of course, there's a whole lot of good ones. We think there's probably about 600 that are beneficials, and about 100 that maybe could go either way, either pathogens or commensals like Fusobacterium. And the oral microbiome is the second largest microbiome in the body. It's a very complex habitat, and it's not just about teeth. It's like a rainforest, just like the gut microbiome. It's a community. And, we have some symbiotic bacteria, we have some commensal bacteria, and then we have some pathogens. And the mix is what really makes a lot of difference. I put this article in here about molecular mechanisms linking stress and insulin resistance, because so often when I see stressed out people, their mouths are dry. And when their mouths are dry, then that's going to change the whole component of their oral microbiome rainforest. And so, I'm seeing just so many more stressed out people. As we know, these are stressful times. And the evidence is in the mouth. So when people have a dry mouth, that can be from stress. If you're running from a tiger, your mouth's going to, it'll go dry. Boom. You just, you don't need saliva when you're running from a tiger. And of course, you're not digesting, you're not absorbing things, you're not feeling. You don't have time to stop and poop if you're running from a tiger. Lots of things are happening. And so whenever people have this, chronic stress, when the tiger's after them all the time, then the dry mouth changes the environment, and that's going to change the gut too. Also, there are so many medications that cause dry mouth, and that's going to impact the gut via the oral microbiome. Next slide, please. So much of the research that I'm seeing lately, like 2023, is talking about how stress is really upstream when it comes to the chronic inflammation of the body. Now, the article on the left is about Fusobacterium, and it's just talking about all these associated systemic diseases. Now, Fusobacterium nucleatum actually induces an immune response and increases inflammation. Now, it does this directly as well as indirectly, and it's pretty big deal to say that it's a direct effect, but it absolutely is direct. We see Fusobacterium as part of Alzheimer's disease, autoimmunity, of course, colon diseases, cancer, rheumatoid arthritis, respiratory diseases, infertility. So far, I've gotten 5 women pregnant. Now, I know that sounds like bragging, but but Fusobacterium, we thought that a lot of the placenta was sterile, but no, we know now it's not, and we find high Fusobacteria. Well, Fusobacterium can cause low birth weight, a lot of miscarriages, as well as infertility. So it's pretty exciting to get an ultrasound picture at 5 months, and then a baby picture. It just makes me so happy. The most recent couple tried for 10 years, and literally all she needed was to get her oral microbiome healthy. It was really almost too simple. Now on the right, it's about colorectal cancer. I'm seeing so much colorectal cancer. I just got a call about 2 hours ago from a 43-year-old who had stage 3 colorectal cancer. So, of course, the first thing we do is test to see where the Fusobacterium level is orally and in the gut. And so far, we're at 100% that it's high in the gut. And it's well known. If we just look at these oral bacteria as being, inflammasomes causing inflammation, then we know that chronic inflammation is a key risk factor for tumor formation. So whatever inflammatory tumors we're dealing with, whether it's breast cancer, prostate cancer, colon cancer, then you can pretty much bet that Fusobacterium is involved. And there are lots and lots of great studies coming out to prove this. I send packets with people to their oncologist. Young patient, a 36-year-old that's actually going through chemo, had her ascending colon removed, and now she's going through chemotherapy. Well, I just got her stool test back last week, and her Fusobacterium's high, and so the oncologist is very agreeable. It's wonderful. It's going to let her take some metronidazole during her chemo. So the goal there is to get rid of it in the gut, and then we're going to deal with it in the mouth where the the origin is. But that's just huge. I don't know if I put an article in here about chemo resistance. I don't think I did. But Fusobacterium's been shown to actually make colon cancer cells, lung breast cancer cells too, the latest research, resistant to chemotherapy, specifically to 5-fluorouracil and cisplatin. But pretty much the thought is those are the two chemotherapeutic drugs that are shown to not work when Fusobacterium's high. But the thought is that it probably just makes the cells chemoresistant to whatever chemotherapy is being used. So next slide, please. I wanted to just bring up about nitric oxide. There are some pretty amazing research studies about how hemoglobin A1C is improved with different kinds of strong mouthwashes, things like things that are doctors recommend, things that we prescribe post oral surgery, or things that really clean up the pathogens in the mouth. Well, Dr. Nathan Bryan is really the expert in nitric oxide. So now we're finding, okay, we're gonna kill those bugs off in the mouth, but now we're also killing off bugs that help produce nitric oxide. So maybe we're in the short term going to help type 2 diabetes, but in the long term, we're going to create some heart problems. And then there's some studies that say in the long term that low nitric oxide actually will cause type 2 diabetes. So, my goodness, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. I mean, it's just so hard to figure out. As I'm always looking for this new research, I'm starting to think that maybe instead of a lot of these heavy duty mouthwashes, anything that's antiseptic, maybe that should be avoided. And we should just be rinsing with some really good, naturally harvested sea salt. I mean, I haven't found studies yet, but I sort of think the simpler, the better when it comes to managing this amazing community that we have in our mouth. So I don't have the answers there, because there are studies that these mouthwashes do help the glycemic index, but there are also plenty of studies that these mouthwashes are harming cardiovascular health. So I want to make you aware of that, because there's also an October 2021 study that Nathan Bryan led that talks about how diabetes is a symptom of nitric oxide deficiency. So anyway, chlorhexidine is one of the prescription mouthwashes that has actually been studied, and I've prescribed tons of it over the years, and I think it's probably not a good thing. It's interesting. It's an antimicrobial that when people use it for a while, their teeth get stained and their tongue, they get black tongue, and that's a sign of the microbial community being totally off, of just obliterating the healthy bacteria also. So,
Debbie, don't a lot of those mouthwashes also have fluoride in them?
Oh yeah, and you definitely want to avoid fluoride. That's gonna impact your thyroid, among other things too. Thank you, Martha. No, that's a great point. Mostly, they have colorings, and mostly you just want something simple. I've been rinsing with salt water. We met the Baja Gold people when Martha was speaking at the Wise Traditions conference. So because of you, Martha, is why I went and met so many nice people. And the Baja Gold people are just awesome. And they have this naturally harvested, forget fermented, naturally harvested sea salt that I really think it's great to rinse with because it has a lot of minerals and micronutrients in it. I saw someone on the chat pop up and say, what toothpaste do you recommend? There's a lot of good toothpaste out there. You know, I'm very much a simpleton, and I like Himalayan toothpaste from Sprouts because it's easy to find. It's, you know, $6 or $8 a tube. It doesn't have fluoride. It doesn't have sodium lauryl sulfate, which is a foaming agent that's not good for your tissue. It does have pomegranate and it has neem. There are a couple of variations. So look for the pomegranate and neem version. There's other good toothpaste out there. They might be harder to access, and you know, some are pretty expensive. So you know, it's a good starting place. If you don't know that you can start somewhere. I mean, I think it's super important to know that you don't have to be perfect. I mean, you just move in the direction of better, and your body is designed to heal, and it's all gonna be good. You don't want to be stressed out over it, especially over what toothpaste you're using. So next slide, please. So this is this article on the left, exploring the imbalances of periodontitis. This is how gum disease affects the immune system. Now, chronic inflammatory diseases are really common. They're very normal. And I think if we were trying to really boil it down to what the oral pathogens do in the body as they circulate, is that they tie up the immune system. You know, your body is trying to hold down that inflammation, and so it can't use its forces to go to other places. What we find so often is when we get the inflammation in the mouth down, then other things get well. I mean, surprising things get well. Like, oh, Dr. Debbie, that rash on my inner thigh went away. Oh, Dr. Debbie, you know, my dandruff is better. I mean, just crazy things. And so I think it really is that the immune system is more free to do what it was designed to do. Now, I put this article in about inflammatory bowel disease because inflammatory bowel disease is really interesting. It's a Western disease. And 100 years ago, it was really, I mean, it's considered a Western disease. It was just kind of in the United States and maybe some developed countries, maybe some European countries, but now it's global. So it shows that it's a lifestyle disease. It's our environment. And so many people think that maybe like the two parts of inflammatory bowel disease are ulcerative colitis and Crohn's, that it's like, oh, it's all genetic. Of course, there's potential. There's of course a genetic component. I am not debating that, but the fact that 100 years ago, you know, in the early 1900s, it wasn't in a lot of countries, but now it's prevalent in countries all over the world. We sort of have the perfect storm of components that are causing this, and you all know that so well. Next slide. This on the, we have, as I said, the perfect storm. Fusobacterium loves sugar, and of course most of the pathogenic bacteria love sugar, and we know what that does just to the intestinal microbiota. But pretty interesting that they can just see it feeding on sugar. And I would love some discussion on allulose. We've been using allulose, and I've just done some research, and it tastes pretty darn good. I don't know if there's any downsides to it, but it's a pretty good option, I think, for the times when it's we're going to have sugar. We're going to go for Easter dinner. We're going to need to take something. And so we've got to have options. It's pretty good option. Next slide.
Know what's interesting? I actually had forgotten about this, and I was going back through a presentation that I had recorded previously that I have to give again, and it's on Parkinson's. But one of the things we noted in our Parkinson's data that I had forgotten about was the Parkinson's gut microbiome is actually making D-allulose. And so there's a higher level of D-allulose in there. And I'll have to go back and look at my notes. Maybe I can do that while you're going through the rest of the papers, because we were thinking that maybe it was trying to counteract something, or, balance something else out. But it's kind of interesting because it's what's considered a rare sugar. And Richard Johnson, who wrote Nature Wants Us to Be Fat, he's actually working with a company that is bringing a D-allulose to the market. But I always think about, like, if it's a rare sugar, then we shouldn't start using it all the time, because it's rare for a reason. But that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, I would love discussion on it, because I don't know much about it, and I don't want to stimulate my sweet tooth. I don't want to need that like I used to. But in terms of the oral microbiome, it seems to be good. So I wanted to throw that in there. I wanted to just briefly talk about the bidirectional relationship between gum disease and type 2 diabetes. Now, please know, if you have any bleeding, you have gum disease. Any bleeding. We're not talking, you'll see these studies and they'll show these pictures, these gnarly pictures, what we call here in Oklahoma Billy Bob teeth. I hope nobody's named Billy Bob, but it's these teeth that people put in as a joke, where there's just, they're just terrible. Well, that's the pictures I see even in when I was at the A4M conference in December. Someone talked about periodontal disease, and that's the picture they showed. And it's like, no, the picture is what you saw earlier. It's what is considered normal. It's what is really early gum bleeding can be impacting your whole body so intensely, different in different people. It's how, your genetic tendencies all weigh into this. That it's, I don't want anyone out there to think, well, my dentist told me my gums look great and I wish everybody was like me. I mean, maybe, but if you know that now it's about 90%, unless you're really working hard to keep your gums healthy, unless you're going to Gail. I don't have Gail's on tonight yet. She was going to be coming from work, but a dental hygienist who gets it and who cares and who's so proficient, and then probably it's impacting your blood sugar in some way. Any bit of periodontal disease, gum disease, is going to drive insulin resistance. Always. I've sent so many people to get checked for diabetes because of how their gums look, and other other factors. But then also, type 2 diabetes increases the chances of gum disease. So it's this super highway going both directions. And so all of us that want to keep our blood sugar more stable, we're taking sugar shift, we're doing all these other things, using I'm going to show you what I recommend starting with. Keeping your oral microbiome healthy is really going to help your blood sugar, always. And that was part of that previous blood test that I showed you. Her fasting blood glucose improved. Pretty amazing. Next slide, please. And we know that chronic inflammation is the problem. And we know that chronic inflammation increases insulin resistance. And of course, as I said earlier, insulin resistance is going to increase the inflammation in your mouth. So I wanted to show you all just some simple things that I have my patients get started with. Now, you can always get more complex, but this works for so many people, and you don't have to be super dexterous to, wrap that floss around your finger and have your finger turn purple and get to the back. Still floss. I'm not going to tell you not to floss, but I really think that these little gum picks are very, very effective to helping people disrupt the biofilm. Now, when you go to the dentist, you want to ask them, where do I have any bleeding? I want to know any bleeding. And they're going to kind of look at you like quizzical, like, what kind of a weirdo are you? And you're saying, no, I know that this is impacting my health span. I know that this is hugely important. And then go to my website and take them research. It's all there, you guys. It's all there, and it's the inexpensive thing, really. So what you have to do with these brush picks is keep that biofilm disrupted once every 24 hours. So you're going to love these because they're easy to use. They're curved. There's other renditions. It's, you find what works in your mouth. It's not a one size fits all. I don't like one size fits all anything. And so, this is find what works in your hands. But these seem to be pretty easy. And then there's more sophisticated ways, but you just want to go between your teeth, and you want to scrub like down under your gums between your teeth with these little gum picks. They're soft. They're plastic. I wish they were better material, but you really can't hurt yourself. So I'm going to see if I can make it squeak. I don't know if it's going to squeak, but you get in there and you just get after it, scrubbing. It's going to feel so good. And at first, if you have any bleeding, at first it may bleed a little bit. Now, I have my patients use some ozonated oil on the brush pick. I have I'll have people use these brush picks after every meal. And then once a day, I have them use like some ozonated oil, or the newest thing. I don't know if Debbie's out there. Hi, Debbie, if you are. She's doing an experiment for me. We didn't get the results yet, but this is Nigella sativa. This is black seed oil. So there's a ton of research, and I did a podcast on it about how highly researched it is for Fusobacterium nucleatum, in fact. So I have people just put, I buy these bottles and fill them up with oil so that they can drop it in their hands. Now, interestingly, I did a test on myself, and it was time for me to get my teeth cleaned. I'm always, Gail, you all know Gail. She's a fantastic dental hygienist. She's pretty booked up, and so I'm always trying to find other good dental hygienists if somebody wants to go, needs options. So I'll go to different places to get my teeth cleaned. And so the previous cleaning that I had was not that good, quite frankly. I was like, be aggressive, but it just wasn't that good. So it's time to get my teeth cleaned. And but I didn't get my teeth cleaned. Instead, I used Nigella sativa 30 days in a row on brush picks. Oh, I got a saliva test. So I got a saliva test, got my baseline, 30 days in a row, Nigella sativa, got another saliva test before getting my teeth cleaned. And interestingly, the bacterial count was down 22% from that 30 days of Nigella sativa on a brush pick. Does that make sense? I sort of got carried away there. But pretty amazing, I thought, as far as something you can do at home, and that proved to be pretty effective. And I think I'm actually going to be involved in a study about all of this before long, because I think it's significant and it really matters for vitality span. Next slide, please. So I've been, the podcast this week is on bovine colostrum. I've been interested in bovine colostrum. I think it's very synergistic with everything you're doing, Martha. A lot of people just have these serious problems. They come in and they're having, diarrhea all day long, and they're having, are they constipated? Their normal of pooping is every 5 days, oh my goodness, or worse. So I've been using some bovine colostrum, and of course it's the first part of breast milk. It has bioactive compounds, and I've been pretty impressed with the clinical results I've gotten. A very dramatic case. A girl came in, she was having diarrhea 12 to 14 times a day. She came in the office, and she's like real cute, really young. And she's like, where's the bathroom? I got to find the bathroom as soon as I get anywhere. And anyway, there's Debbie Burnish. Hi. And so she's going to let us know about her experiment soon. So anyway, she started taking colostrum, and it literally changed her life. She was known known Crohn's diagnosis, and it probably she said her doctor said it has kept her from surgery. So anyway, I wanted just to make you aware of bovine colostrum. The kind, next slide please, the kind I've been using recently is a liposomal delivery that it has phosphatidylcholine and phosphatidylserine as part of that. So anyway, GastroDefense, there's a lot of good kinds. I've really checked out this company. They don't claim that it's organic, but they buy it from good sources. So anyway, that's been working, and I think that's a big part of gut health that's synergistic with probiotics and all the other things we're all doing. Next slide, please. And we don't want to forget the things that are free that increase vitality. You know, we so tend in our society to think we have to buy everything, and there's things we have to buy, but there's a lot of free things. Next slide, please. You know, so many people are chronically, unintentionally dehydrated. And you can tell I've been talking about this a long time. That's, you know, older picture, but nevertheless, I just want to remind everybody to drink a lot of water. It's just so hard to do in our society. I'll think I'm hydrated, and then the next day it's like, okay, I've got to start again, being so intentional about it. Once we're thirsty, then we're probably already dehydrated. Next slide, please. Another free thing is to walk barefooted, and we're getting, you know, close to summer, but just get out and connect to the earth. It's just so important and so easy, and it just makes you feel like a kid again to get out and just take your shoes off and enjoy that bare ground. Next slide, please. And then I wonder who in the chat, this is kind of a brain test, can name 3 cars that start with P. Who can win this contest? 3 cars that start with P. Okay, so somebody tell me the 3 cars, whoever was first. What are the 3 cars that start with P? We have let's see, we have Porsche, Plymouth,
Porsche, and Pontiac.
I'm sorry, those all start with gas.
Peugeot.
Those all
Pontiac.
no, they're gas. That starts with gasoline.
A good sense of humor.
A good sense of humor. Yes, that's a part of vitality. Thanks, Liberty. Yeah. So, no, pink Cadillac, that starts with gasoline too, I think. Maybe even diesel. I don't know. Not with P though. And so you want to remember to nurture humor always. It's so key for blood sugar. I mean, Martha can attest to that. It's huge for blood sugar, and it's been studied. We shouldn't have to study it though. We just look at little kids and see how they're, you know, throwing their head back and belly laughing. And we need to do that too, as much as we possibly can. So next slide, please. So, but here we are back to Louis Pasteur and Antoine Béchamp. You know, Louis didn't fare so well in the area of health. He had a stroke in his 40s. He died in his 70s. Dr. Béchamp lived into his 90s, and it said that on his deathbed, Dr. Pasteur said, "The germ is nothing. The terrain is everything." So we're talking about terrain, and that's what Martha does so well with all her research. You know, getting this terrain, this rainforest healthy. It's just so key, and it's where we want to put our efforts. We want to have these inside out strategies for health. Next slide, please. And this was, I invite you to watch my TED Talk. This was was part of my TED Talk, gum disease. Now the number's up to 90% of the global population. It really is the largest, most underdiagnosed, undertreated, communicable, because some of those bugs are transmissible, transmissible in the world. So it really matters. You're going to have to be your own health advocate, and really potentially test yourself. You can get the, I don't think I have anything in here about the bristle test, do I, Mike? But with the bristle test, you can save some money with, I think it's Vitality 15. Is that right? Vitality 15. You can save $15. All caps, Vitality 15. The bristle test, you can test yourself at home, and that looks for Fusobacterium and lots of other oral pathogens. Next slide, please. I put this in because this is a free download that's on my website. It's the Fearless 40. It's actually, fear is just gripping people, and fear will wreck health. Fear wrecks the gut. Fear wrecks the oral microbiome. It really does in so many ways. So if you're interested in just seeing 40 Bible verses that are addressing fear, just go to my website. It's a free download, and you can just start memorizing those, and it's good for your brain too. Next slide, please. And join me on the podcast. Martha was one of the first people to say yes. Oh, Mike, someone's saying they scanned it, but the QR said it's disabled. QR code said it's disabled. So, I don't know. But anyway, it's on the website. If you just go to drdebbieozment.com, it will say free resources. I'm sorry about that. We'll check that out. So
we can send that in a follow-up if you check that out and let us know.
Okay.
One of the other things about fear too, I was looking for it. I can't find the paper right now, but I'll try to find the paper that actually showed that chronic fear elevates, or it does something with iron metabolism in the body. And of course, iron feeds pathogenic bacteria. So the more fearful you are, the more iron you're releasing, I guess, for these pathogens. I have to go find the paper because it was really fascinating. Somebody shared it with me during COVID because everybody was so terrified. And, of course, that psychology was just making things worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, I think we're kind of going to get into that again, potentially. So I think it's a good idea to retrain your brain. You know what? Fires together, wires together. So if you're constantly fearful, you're going to be more constantly fearful. It just, that connection. But if you concentrate on, not being fearful, if you concentrate on humor, if you concentrate on relationships, positivity, then it's gonna translate into actual physical health. You're gonna have more fun in life, but you're also going to be metabolically healthier. So thank you all so much for being here tonight. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you. We'll open it up for questions. And, one of the things that sort of popped up in my mind listening to you, so you said Fusobacteria is a gram-negative bacteria. And I think Dr. Davis has talked about endotoxin. This is something I've really been looking at deeply lately, is the lipopolysaccharide endotoxin from gram-negative bacteria and its implication across all diseases. And as we age, our immune system is having to deal with this load of lipopolysaccharide, and the less we're able to clear it, the more inflammation we have. And I spoke at a conference last weekend, and one of the areas that they were focused on, so a lot of the people at this conference were on the carnivore diet, and they had a number of cardiologists looking at cholesterol and LDL cholesterol in particular. But one of the things that was not discussed there is actually LDL cholesterol is one of the components of our blood that actually binds and removes LPS endotoxin. And so that's kind of one of those things I'm thinking, wow. So if you're taking a statin and you're lowering that LDL, are you lowering your ability to clear the endotoxin from your body? So I'm, after thinking about all that, I actually want to hop back on Dr. Davis's one of his calls and talk to him about that, because, I think this is a missing piece of the puzzle kind of across the board. And there was a infectious disease doctor at this conference who treats people with, chronic diabetes wounds. And he's like, people are not getting better. And he came up to me after my talk because I was talking about endotoxin. And, he said, I think this is really one of the main drivers of everything that's going on. And, we talked about ways that we could work on to show people this and to have an impact. So, you're right. It starts in the mouth because you're building up that endotoxin in your mouth, and then it's getting in your gut and crossing over into the blood and throughout the body. But it does start in the mouth. So anyway, I thank you for that. And we can open up the queue and take questions. So Debbie Burnish.
Oh, hi there, Dr. Ozment. So I had a question. So I have a new friend, and I just met this woman, and she's overweight, and I guess she's like 60 or 70 years old. I'm not sure. She's got type 2 diabetes, and she's on Ozempic and glipizide. So she's on two diabetes drugs, but she has type 2, not type 1. But I also noticed we ate dinner together, and she ate so incredibly fast. Like, I've never seen anybody eat that fast in my life. And so when you were talking about how the enzymes, so how much do the enzymes really play into that digestion, and then how much of that could really feed to her type 2 diabetes? A lot? And then...
Oh, that's such an excellent point, Deb. No, a lot. It's where the carbohydrates start getting broken down. And also it's so much a part of satiety. So say when somebody comes in and they don't, they're just like overwhelmed with where to start. I say, do one thing. Just start putting your fork down or your spoon after every bite. Literally, I tell them, just start there. And pretty much people can lose weight. They'll start just feeling more satisfied. It gives their brain time to tell their stomach, you're full. But it's a big part of digestion. Now, I've never seen a study, Debbie, about, what it actually is doing biochemically. But, once again, I think we're designed to eat slowly. We're not designed to pull food out of a window and drive along and honk at cars and stuff that food in. And, no, we're designed to cook slowly and eat slowly and enjoy it, to really enjoy it. So that's so interesting. Yeah, if she could put her fork down, who knows what that would do for her blood sugar. I mean, for one thing, she probably eat less.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so she is also on a fixed income. And so then there's also the correlation between type 2 diabetes and the bad oral microbiome. So she would be a good candidate then to do the black seed oil with the PICs, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then that would be an inexpensive thing for her on a fixed income.
It would. And she can get a bottle of Nigella sativa black seed oil she probably can get a bottle for $30, a pretty big bottle. Just get, I try to get organic, cold press.
Because since I'm using it, I've got an extra one that I can give her. So.
Yeah. And, I just like drop a few drops into my hand and dip that brush, in there and put it in there. But she's going to decrease inflammation. Even if she's not able to get like a deep cleaning, she can still decrease inflammation just getting those brushes in there.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
I thank you.
Sue? Clement?
Hi, I have a couple of questions. I don't know if I missed it, but if you were talking about the oral DNA test, and if you get one of those and it shows fusobacterium or other lots of bad bacteria, what do you do?
Well, you want to, if you're getting an oral DNA test, you have to get through a dentist. And
Okay.
so it would be a dentist that, understands what that means. So then they would they would look at your mouth and kind of see what particular personalized treatments you need. Everybody doesn't need the same thing.
Okay.
But if you wanted, just as far as decentralized health, to be able to do a test yourself, you could do a bristle test.
Okay.
Bristlehealth.com, and so and they're going to give you a really good report.
Okay.
Awesome.
And two other quick questions. What does the laser part of the deep cleaning do? Is that just for the bleeding, or what does that do?
I use a diode laser, and what it does, it actually sterilizes the pocket. It breaks the cell wall of any remaining bacteria down there, and then it helps the tissue heal. So it's not a cutting laser, more of a healing laser.
Okay. And then another thing, you mentioned zonulin. I don't know what that is as a measure of leaky gut. How is that used?
It's a protein that's released when the gut's leaky. And so it's like if you get a stool test, a lot of stool tests will give you zonulin. It's a marker that you can use to compare,
Okay.
between results.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You can still have a leaky gut and not have it show up in a zonulin test, though. I will tell you that.
Right.
Jennifer?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you both. I learned so much from both of you every single time you talk. And as you know, in Dr. Davis' world, we talk a lot about L-reuteri, and now there are lozenges, not just L-reuteri lozenges, but one of my nutrition clients was talking about another probiotic lozenge. And when I looked into it, I guess I realized I don't know what ideal CFUs should be in an oral microbiome product. Is it different than the GI? Because we're learning that more seems to be better in the GI tract, but where do you start with an oral product? And which ones do you recommend?
Oh, that's a good question. One of the bacteria, like I like to see Lactobacillus reuteri. I like to see Streptococcus salivarius with a numbered strain in there. Otherwise, I think I don't know, Jen, about CFUs. I really don't. There's so many other factors in the mouth, and the last thing I want people to do is to think of an oral probiotic is really going to solve their problems. It's a good adjunct in the mouth, very different than in the gut, because you have access, in the mouth. So therefore, I think using like the brush picks, I use oral probiotics, but Biora, I'm trying to think of, I don't have any laid out, but I really just think get something at this point, and there's a study I'm going to be involved in, so I may have some different opinions in about 6 months, but overall, it's in addition to staying hydrated. Of course, there's a lot of research, I didn't bring it up, but just eating real food, all the things you guys are eating feeds the good bacteria. And there's been good studies that when people just change their diet, their oral microbiome improves. I mean, doing nothing else. So,
well, wouldn't even the L-reuteri SIBO yogurt, when you're putting it in your mouth, you're going to be getting L-reuteri, or the fermented foods that we're having, or beet kvass. I mean, I started making the beet kvass because I had seen something about the I mean, I never really used mouthwashes, but that the mouthwashes were messing with your nitric oxide, and that beet kvass could help with that nitric oxide. So, and that if you were going to have it, you should take it in the morning before you brush your teeth. So anyway, so I mean, I think some things like that, maybe more so than focusing on a commercial product that you know.
Yeah, I think that goes back to, like, what would our ancestors do? What's our body designed for? And that's always the first line of defense. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And then are the allulose and xylitol have a prebiotic effect somewhat in the gut? Is that the same process in the mouth? That the
You
good
know, Jen, I see these oral products that say they have prebiotics, toothpaste that have prebiotics.
yeah.
I'm not yet convinced they're there long enough to make a difference.
Yeah.
I just don't know if that's really that big of a deal. So I don't know.
Yeah.
In the mouth, so much of what you're doing is just not harming things, and then removing that biofilm. So it's a mechanical process of removing the biofilm, and then not using something so harsh that you're killing all the good guys.
Mm-hmm.
Well, quote, prebiotics are essentially carbohydrates, and carbohydrates select for different bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, just like eating pasta and bread and having that stick to your teeth, I mean, different prebiotics may have different effects. So I don't know so much about the oral prebiotic, whether that's a great idea or not.
Or that beneficial, or if people just like seeing, I don't know.
I mean, it's kind of the latest buzzword, really.
Right. And I'm always a little suspicious of buzzwords, quite frankly. I mean, I think we just need to simplify things. There's Gail. Hi, Gail.
Hey, Dr. Debbie, also there's a company coming out with a gum that you chew that's both probiotic and prebiotic, trying to address this issue of having the prebiotic in your mouth long enough to help stimulate the bacteria. But it kind of leads me to believe that all our vegetables that we're chewing and chomping and all these good things that we're trying to do are probably really helping our oral microbiome. So I looked up some research on that. I'll have to look that up again. But so there's probably some really good things that we're doing with the yogurts that we're eating. And then, all the prebiotic fibers that Dr. Davis has us doing, especially if you leave them in your mouth and you're chewing a lot. I think that's, probably a good way to think about feeding those microbes.
Yeah. And to that point, just to chew longer, like we talked about earlier. I don't know if you were.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
There was a Horace Fletcher that was a health enthusiast about 100 years ago, and he would talk about Fletcherizing your food, and he advocated chewing 100 times. Well, and he saw lots of health benefits. He's probably a little wacko on 100 times. Nobody can really do that. But I think if I say just osmotize your food, don't have to Fletcherize, but just chew till it's liquid. Just take your time and chew and enjoy every bite. I tell people, if you're going to eat it, enjoy it. Don't cram it in and swallow it as fast as you can out of guilt. No, chew it. And so that probably, Gail, is a really great point in what you said, Martha, of just the natural prebiotics in food, that when we're chewing our food, like Debbie's friend's not chewing, then, if we chew our food, we're designed to chew our food. We're designed to start it digesting, to break it down, break those cell walls, then those prebiotics are released. And there we have it with good food.
Right. And it's not so difficult to do those kinds of things. And I think, when we go and have like our saliva test and we get our deep cleaning and then we start keeping the bad bacteria under control with our picking and those kinds of things, it's not that hard to, again, if you're eating well and you're having a lot of prebiotic foods, it's just a natural thing. It's not like, okay, let's have another pill, let's have another,
Right.
Health doesn't have to cost $1 million, and we complicate things and we stress ourselves out, and then that's a whole nother issue.
Mhm.
But that's just my 45-year dental hygiene opinion.
It's a
It's
good,
a good
one.
one.
Karen?
Oh, hey, hi. Yeah, that's my email name. Karen is my actual name. But hi, Martha. Hi, Dr. Debbie. I've seen you on Dr. Davis's calls before, and I'm so glad that you're here. So here's one thing I've been dying to know more about. I don't know if you've heard of this website called Wellness Mama. The woman is Katie Wells, and she just started making products in her own kitchen because she just wasn't satisfied with the health of what you could get commercially available. So she, designed like a Wellness Mama toothpaste and and other things. But one thing she said that I thought was really interesting is that she thought that glycerin, which is like a main ingredient in so many toothpaste and mouthwashes, is actually an endocrine disruptor. So and so when I read that, it kind of made sense to me. So I stopped using like my Oral Mirror toothpaste, and I stopped with my, Perio Bright, mouthwash, because glycerin was like the first ingredient there. What do you think about that? Is that possible?
It's certainly possible. I don't know. I'm making a note right now. I want to research this. That's super interesting. I think there's a lot of endocrine disruptors out there that we just don't know they are. I mean, so many people are having so many hormone problems. Okay, I'll look.
Yeah.
I'll research that, Karen, and see. And with natural toothpaste, I mean, I think if you could find a recipe you like, once again, it's just a medium to be using to brush your teeth. It's not on there that long. I mean, if you find something that you can mix up at your sink, I think go for it. The fewer the chemicals, the fewer the big words, the better.
Well,
How do you feel about baking soda?
I think baking soda is good, Martha. And I think if you put a little bit of essential oil in there, a little thieves, or I mean, I think why not? And then if you're going to test yourself occasionally, you're going to know what's working. I just think toothpaste generally can be overrated and too expensive.
And I do have to say, I have bought into the expensive toothpaste must be good kind of thing, and I've gotten burned by that. But I have started using like the Wellness Mama toothpaste, because the other thing that she said, which was the second thing I was going to ask you about, and other people are asking about in the chat, is hydroxyapatite. She's saying, or Katie Wells is saying, that hydroxyapatite is like a natural mineral substance that really helps to harden teeth, much more so than a lot of other substances that are commercially available that claim to harden teeth. So what do you think about hydroxyapatite?
I think it's great. Everything
Awesome.
I know about it, I think it's a good ingredient.
Okay, so I'm not going to be making my own toothpaste. I'm probably just going to buy Wellness Mama and just leave it at
Find what
that.
you like. There's everybody's different, and I've tried every time one comes out. I buy every flavor because I want to see, and like spend all this money on this Earth toothpaste, and some people may love it, but it was just slimy, and So I just think you have to find what you like, keep it simple, know that more expensive doesn't mean better. So thanks for that, Karen.
I just wanted to say, Wellness Mama has a really good recipe for homemade toothpaste, and it's wonderful. She did that before she started selling the expensive toothpaste. and it's
Right.
online, or used to be. It's great.
I will say I don't recommend charcoal, because
no.
if you did charcoal, you end up with black.
Yes, you do.
And
And
it's
it creates other
really
issues too.
difficult to get rid, because I have tried that myself.
It creates other issues too. And Dr. Debbie, I have one more question, then I will stop. So the last time I went for a cleaning, my dental hygienist was like, well, you have a tendency to develop tartar. Otherwise your teeth look good, but I think you should be flossing twice a day. You should be like flushing with like a water pick again twice a day, as well as brushing twice a day. So I've started doing that, but of course that's like a 20-minute routine now instead of the 5 minutes I had. Does that make sense? Can you do too much of that? Can you overbrush and I don't know, hydrate or whatever?
Well, I mean, you can brush too much with a hard toothbrush, but the whole key, Karen, is if your gums are not bleeding, and if you're not getting cavities, then your oral microbiome is healthy. So there's no hard and fast rule. It's not one size fits all. It's whatever it takes to keep your mouth healthy. So I don't know, maybe the brush picks would help you more than floss. I think they're a little more manageable, and floss still has its place, but it's really just knowing if you don't have bleeding, then you're healthy. Then that would be the key.
Okay, and I do use those little picks too, and I use them and I floss. So, which is why it takes me an hour to even get out of the bed. So there you go.
But it's not about your teeth. Once again, your teeth are going to be the last to go. This is about systemic health. This is about your blood sugar, your insulin. This is about your brain health. This is about your vascular inflammation. So what you're doing in there, your teeth are going to benefit, but we've thought it's about teeth. It's not about teeth. It's about the rest of your body.
Thank you so much, Dr. Debbie. Appreciate it.
Praful?
Hello. Good evening, everybody. I've got a couple of questions. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, very good. So, what is supposed to be the saliva pH balance?
6.5 to 7.
6.7. So, if we use the what do you call
pH strips.
the baking soda? Isn't it going to change the pH?
Well, you can check it pretty easily. In fact, I check mine every morning. Here's just a little. Can y'all see that?
Right.
pH.
Yes.
And I check it. It's pretty interesting, based on what all going on. I mean, I keep track of it. But yeah, you want it about, hovering around 7. And that's gonna make your happy bacteria jump for joy. And that's going to push your bad bacteria away. That's going to make you less prone to decay. I mean, that's another very inexpensive way to just monitor what's happening in your oral microbiome. And I didn't put a slide in about that, but so interesting, the research around pH and just a real, real food, and how that promotes good pH, because just at the systemic, it's all connected. This forgotten orifice is connected to the rest of it.
Okay, so it's supposed to be around 6.5.
It's 6.5 to 7.
Okay, so the baking soda is not going to change the pH balance?
Well, you can monitor it. Most people have, that's really good for pH, actually. There's enough things that are lowering it. You're concerned that it's going to make it too high, right? Too basic, too alkaline.
Okay.
I mean, you're rinsing it out. So because I have thought about that myself, but once you rinse it out, you're going to have a temporary change, but it's not going to be a permanent and lasting change in the pH, I don't think.
Yeah. And you'll know immediately. I mean, it's, you can vary it from there.
Okay. You mentioned about the ozone, ozone about rinsing with the what is it, oil, ozone?
Actually, it was to put it on your brush, to put it on those little brushes. Get a little bottle of ozonated olive oil or whatever you like,
Okay.
and you can dip it in there and just put it between your teeth. It'd probably be too expensive to rinse with.
Okay,
Uh,
so the question is that ozone usually kills all the microbiome in your mouth, right? Like I was in chat with Dr. Nathan Brown one time, and he was saying that it's better not to use any kind of a mouthwash because it usually kills all the microbiome, and the bacteria which produces nitric oxide, it also kills it. So not to use the ozone.
uh,
So
so,
I use a water ozone. I got a ozone pen which I use it once a week to in the water, make ozonated water, and just gargle it. So what do you thought about that?
yeah, I know Nathan Bryan. I didn't know no ozone. I think ozone is really beneficial for the mouth because it just oxygenates things. So um, I'll ask Dr. Bryan about that. It's not per se an antimicrobial. Ozone's not. It's just putting oxygen in there. I actually interviewed Dr. Frank Schellenberger on the podcast a week or so ago, and we talked about ozone with periodontal disease. So, but I'll find out. That's I'll double check with Dr. Bryan about that.
Okay. Now, anybody has checked the microbiome of the African people in Africa?
I don't know about the
Anybody?
oral microbiome, but there
The
has
oral
been,
microbiome.
I know there's been quite a bit of research on the fecal microbiome, but I'd have to look to see if they've done any work on the oral microbiome in the indigenous populations.
Right. So the point I was getting at, if we can copy the same thing what they have, then we will be good at it.
I'm sorry, I have to just ask, because Africa is a continent with like 167 countries. Can you be more specific about what countries you're talking about?
The people who usually lives in a jungle, like a Maasai tribe in Tanzania.
Tanzania. Okay, I'm
Right.
just wondering.
There was a whole series of studies, I think, in Tanzania with the Maasai. I can't remember the researcher's name, but he did a whole thing looking at their diet because certain times of the year they were all, tubers and things that were growing, and then the other half of the year they were just basically, they drink the blood out of the cow. So, they have a rather peculiar diet, but he had looked at the changes in the microbiome and the diversity and things that they had from those two seasonal patterns. But I don't think he looked at the oral microbiome. So that's probably what you're referring to. And then there's another research project with the Yanomami people in South America who are in the region. I believe the Yanomami are in Venezuela and maybe tipping over into Colombia. Is that, or I'm not sure if it's Colombia that's right next there to Venezuela, but the same thing with the Yanomami is looking at what the microbiome, and I know in the Yanomami they've looked at the skin, but I don't know about the oral microbiome. So I'll have to ask about that. It's kind of an interesting question because obviously they're not brushing their teeth.
Correct, and they have perfect teeth.
Well, they might be using what they call chew sticks. I've been in Nicaragua a lot on mission trips, and some of the people there just have these gorgeous teeth, and they just get a twig and kind of make it into a little gum pick, which would be better than plastic. But they clean, they disrupt that biofilm. So I don't know if that's what they do, but lots of the countries I've been to, um, they do just kind of make do with what they have and do a great job.
Okay, very good. Well, the point I was getting at, if we can know the microbiome and if we can make the probiotic out of it, will be beneficial to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you so much. Appreciate
Mm-hmm.
it.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm next, Bob Mason. Nice to be here. Thank you everyone for doing this. It's interesting. I had a oral DNA lab test thanks to a very proactive dental hygienist who heard me, we were discussing my mouth, and she recommended this DNA oral test. But I went and had it, but I got no feedback from anybody because my dentist was like Sergeant Schultz. He knows nothing. She didn't really want to weigh in on the evaluation. So I'm kind of like undentist, so to speak, trying to figure out what I have. And so if you don't mind, I'd share the results. But I had a very high risk pathogen called TF at 10.3. Then my mid-risk pathogen was FN, what we've been talking all today about, was 10.5. Mm-hmm. And the other comment was that interleukin 6 was high risk in my DNA. Mm. So I was trying to navigate that, and I've been trying all these little home remedies, ad hoc things. So I'm very happy to hear about the black seed oil. I don't know if you give me any feedback on that. I'd also like to know how often should I brush my teeth with the black seed oil, and I'll share it with you. I went to an outside doctor. She gave me like a kind of a clever mouthwash, which I'm happy to share with the team here. Let me start with that. That's a lot.
Yeah, no, Bob. I think you should. I'm so glad you asked. The Tannerella forsythia, the TF, is a very inflammatory bacteria. It's been studied a lot in. My dog's pulling my computer off. It's been studied a lot in cardiovascular disease. It's very inflammatory vascularly. So you didn't have anything in the PG area?
Nothing PG. Let's see. Is PG?
That's PG's memory, and it's rheumatoid arthritis, very correlated there.
I did have PG also, but it was low. It was 10.5. Sorry, but yeah.
You don't even want anything to show up in that red complex area. You don't want any PG. You don't want any TF. You don't want any. The TD is Treponema denticola. It's usually coming from a bad root canal. So, if anybody,
which I had one a long time ago. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. But that's usually like you could have that checked, and that's an important one because it really will disrupt your blood-brain barrier, and then of course Fuso makes them all worse. I would recommend, Bob, that you find somebody who will do a deep cleaning in your mouth. I mean, maybe your dental hygienist does, but if she recommended that you have the test, I'll tell you what, you guys, the dental hygienist, that's the most important seat in the house. They want to know, they want to learn about this, and they want to help people, and they just need to be given, they need to be set free to really get to tell people what this all means, because Bob, it is huge for your health. It is huge for your health span, and then Fusobacterium, of course, if it's high, if it's even very high, I would have a stool test and see if it's in your gut, especially if there's any colorectal cancer in your family, or if you're not pooping, beautifully pooping every day. You don't have to tell us that, but it really, really, really matters. It's a big deal, and the remedy generally is a deep cleaning. So the only reason, if you knew it was in your gut, you might want to do a little bit of antibiotic to get rid of it in your gut.
I mean, one thing I would say is it is not that easy to find, depending on where you live, to find a dentist who has this knowledge and understanding, and frankly, availability. I actually traveled to Oklahoma City to see Debbie, and took my husband to see Debbie. And then we've been working on a biological dentist solution to deal with some of our root canal things since we saw her last June. And we are just now to the point where it looks like we're going to be able to get in to see somebody, but we're going to have to fly again to another location because there is not somebody conveniently located near where I live who knows the faintest thing about what's going on. So, I mean, not to discourage you, but you may have to, you may have to get in the car and drive somewhere.
Yeah, and you may have to find a periodontist who is an older periodontist. I mean, please know I hate to always say, younger, older, but when we were trained, we addressed this in 1981 when I was in school. This is not new. We just didn't know the systemic implications because we didn't have DNA, but we still talked about bleeding gums, and we still, we're trying to fix teeth. But now that this is so in the research, it blows my mind that it's not everywhere. I mean, I could work 7 days a week if I wanted to, because of the people that know more, that really know what they need to have done. So I would say find a periodontist that's maybe 50 years or older. Tell them you want a good deep cleaning, and that you want to be tested again. And then, like Martha said, find a biological dentist. This is really your future, and you have to be proactive. I mean, but as I said earlier, and I fully believe it, you guys are the A plus honor students when it comes to microbiome. This is a big deal.
Yeah,
So
I had the
Yeah.
test prior to the yogurt, and starting on the sugar shift and the whole Dr. Davis yogurt journey. So I just so you know, I'll share this with you. I did go to a functional doctor and ask, part of that whole treating me for SIFO and SIBO, kind of the air testing. I still have some high marks there. She gave me this some couple side hacks. I'll share them with you. Chewing on clove sticks, a couple times a day, which I've been doing religiously. And she created a mouthwash for me out of liquid cinnamon, which I bought on Amazon. Same thing, the sea salt mineral salt that you're suggesting, baking soda, and she added a polysorbate, which I was kind of I did research on it. It's an emulsifier, so I was kind of nervous about that. But I use that for a mouthwash, brush my teeth with the probiotic toothpaste, yada, 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 chew on these. I don't know. Am I wasting my time, or are these good hacks just to keep changing?
That's great. I mean, Bob, that's great. I think too, then you maybe just retest with the bristle test, and it's going to look at your fusobacterium. That's, it's going to be less expensive, and you get to read it yourself. But I applaud.
I'll do that. And I might reach out to you, and do a stool test again down the road. I'll do DNA tests again and see how it turns out. And I might be reaching out for some guidance and help.
Yeah. It's such baseline health. And you don't know the snake that doesn't bite you. So you don't know what you might be preventing to get this microbiome balanced. So I just really applaud you. You guys are just so impressive. And I don't know why everybody doesn't do this dentist wise. I don't know. The research is clear. If you listen to this podcast, there's lots of oral DNA tests out there, and the developer, we talked about that. Why is everybody not using it? We don't know. It's easy. They have a database that's huge that people can just learn. But when I give lectures, like continuing education lectures, the room is predominantly dental hygienist. I can't say enough good things for dental hygienist. And they'll ask me, well, now, Dr. Debbie, why does my dentist won't let me talk about this? And I tell them, find somebody else to work for. Quit your job. Find a dentist who will address this. This is life and death. This is life and death. I saw a patient, I guess it's been 2 months, stage 4 pancreatic cancer, found the fusobacterium in her gut, found their research talking about how how it feeds pancreatic cancer. She was losing weight, diarrhea constantly. You know, diarrhea is an early sign of pancreatic cancer before a diagnosis even. Talked to some physicians. We ended up putting her on a liquid metronidazole, got her mouth cleaned up. Her mouth was not that bad. She is now gaining weight. She is having 2 formed bowel movements a day. I don't know if we're too late. I don't know. But in some amount, we have freed up her immune system. She is feeling good. She's doing other things. She's doing, you know, this is not the only thing she's done. She is fighting for her life because the medical establishment said call hospice. She's like, no. But this was a piece of it. And I'm convinced with what I see day in and day out, this is a hugely important piece. And people have to take, they have to grab the ball and run with it for their own health.
Thank you so much. Appreciate everything you do.
Thank you.
Norma Jean?
Hello, everybody. I kind of just wanted to talk about the same things that Bob wanted to talk about, because I have a microbiome test that was done for the mouth. It actually isn't for me, it's for my aunt. And I was talking to her when I last saw her, and I said, oh, you have to listen to Dr. Debbie because she knows all about this. And just now when you were bringing up the pancreatic cancer, this happens to be my aunt, who's my mother's sister. And my mother passed away from pancreatic cancer about 30 years ago. And she, probably had God knows what kind of dental issues. I know she had a mouthful of metal and all kinds of stuff. But on that microbiome test for the mouth, what was the PG again?
Porphyromonas gingivalis.
Okay. So that hers was high in that. It wasn't over the limit, but it was, that and the TF were high, and the Fusobacterium nucleatum, and then the PI and the PM. So,
and I don't like those lines on there, Norma Jean. Like those reference ranges really kind of demark they're related to the teeth. If that's really like, oh,
okay.
you might lose. So with PG and TF and TD and AA, you don't want anything to show up there. Like,
okay.
So
this dentist actually recommended that she have this testing done, and then the results came back, and they were like, yeah, I have no idea what that means. So I was just like, okay, so they had no solution for her other than to take some Flagyl. And if you don't tolerate Flagyl, take I don't know, a couple other things.
Yeah, well, and that won't do any good unless the mouth is treated. Like, we don't want to throw antibiotics at it. Unless we solve the root problem. Yeah.
So she lives in Florida, so I guess I'll see if I can help her find a biological dentist or hygienist that she can go and get a deep cleaning.
Yeah, have her look on. It's not necessarily a biological dentist. Have her look on the Oral DNA website.
What's it called again?
The Oral DNA website where the test
Oral
came
DNA.
From. Genetics and Texas. But they should have a list, and then you have to kind of call, just like Bob said, they give you a test, but they don't really follow up. Call and say, okay, how do you treat this? Just ask open-ended questions like, tell me what you do for this kind of thing.
Okay.
And I think when, that's the whole reason I have a podcast. It's not a dental podcast, but I've in seeing and trying to get the message out. I think it has to be people like you all that go to the dentist and say, I want this addressed. I care about this. I just think it's going to have to be grassroots, because quite frankly, there's way more money in the restorative side, and it's what we know how to do already.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not saying anything bad about any dentist. It's just how
No,
we're
I know. Well, it's the medical field also, so it's
and
you have to be your own advocate for sure.
you have to be, and it's been the dental hygienist responsibility to handle the cleaning. And then as insurance has moved in and people have had less time, to clean teeth, it's more polished. So you can just see how it's changed. And so that's why you're exactly right. Being your own advocate, it's your life, and you just gotta.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
I love your podcast.
Oh, thank you. And I'm sorry I'm preaching. I'm not.
No,
forgive me.
you're not. That's what we're here for. We're here to listen. So good to see you again, Dr. Debbie.
Thank you.
Okay, Mahaleen, I don't know why you keep getting dropped down to the bottom, so I'm going to call on you before Debbie, since Debbie already got to ask a question.
That is so kind. Thank you very, very, very much. So, first of all, I very much appreciate. Let me change phone. That will be better.
Yes.
So, it's good to see you again, Dr. Debbie. Martha, thank you for those presentations. You're the best. So I besides the gut test, I would like to. This is still not working.
I think you have your other phone on.
Yeah, maybe that shut it down.
There you go.
So, besides the oral DNA test, because I already got a bunch of DNA tests done, and I would like not to do another DNA test, but would a gut zoomer give some information on the mouth microbiome?
Well, Maha, I don't use gut zoomer, but it's a great test. It will show you if that fusobacterium has colonized in your gut. So from that standpoint, it's certainly useful.
Oh, you'll have to unmute yourself, Mahaleen. I muted you because we were getting feedback. Sorry.
Thank you for doing that. So, other tests besides gut zoomer, oral DNA, you could recommend?
Yeah, I like the bristle test. Bristlehealth.com, and you can put Vitality, all caps 15 to say $15. It's not crazy expensive. I think it was $129. I could 149, my husband's saying. But it will give you a gut reading too, and they're improving it all the time. It's a really good option.
Could you put this in the chat?
Yes, I sure.
Yeah.
Bristlehealth. Is it bristlehealth.com, Mike? Is that? I'll have him check it.
And then my last question. I heard Dr. Huberman speaking of the microbiome, the oral microbiome, and he recommended that in the morning, before even getting up, we would take a little bit of water in the mouth, switch it around, and swallow it. Because he was saying that during the night, the microbiome secretes certain probiotics and certain chemicals that could benefit the oral microbiome and the gut microbiome if ingested first thing in the morning. Have you heard anything of that nature?
No, but why not? I mean, and I think Huberman Lab's awesome. I mean, I haven't heard that particular, I've been hearing about that podcast. I need to listen to it.
Which one? Which podcast is it? What episode?
Dr. Huberman, neurologist.
Right, but who was he interviewing, or who was he? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
Okay, that's
I
fine.
just
He just
had-
has so many episodes.
Yeah,
You'll never
Yes,
find
I
the
mean,
one
there's
you're
so
talking
many of them, and
Yeah.
I'm not sure which one it is. I could try to research it and get back to you on that.
Pretty
Okay.
recent. I think it's a monologue, Martha, and it's pretty recent.
Okay.
Hearing about it.
Cool.
I'm going to put this in
Thank you again, everyone. I really appreciate this. Blessings to us
Thank you
all.
very much. Debbie, you had another question? Debbie Burnish.
Oh, I was just going to say to Bob and to anybody else, if you have an oral DNA test and you get the results, so I had tested it, I had done oral DNA with Dr. Ozment, and then the sheet came back and said basically what I needed to do. And I used to be in sales, so I'm a little outgoing, but I went into the dentist and I basically said, this is what I need to do. And I showed him exactly what the sheet had said. And so I think, and I had another friend, and her name is Susan, and she got the test done, and she went into the dentist, and she's a really nice person. And I think she was a little shy. And I think you have to go in like your life depends on it and say, this is what I need. And, and I have to get this done. And you can't be shy. You've got to be forceful. And then and don't back down. I mean, you just paid. Like, I was getting crowns done, so I had a lot of leverage on my side. But still, if you're getting your teeth cleaned and you're paying to get these things done, you really have to push the dentist to do what he's supposed to be doing, instead of just like, what is it, Dr. Schultz or whatever. I mean, it's just, they can't, it's just, they don't want to get involved, and they really have to do this.
No, you're exactly right. You have, like we said earlier, be your own best advocate. And I think that's going to make dentists go, this really matters, because your life does depend on it, potentially. Absolutely does depend on it. You all have heard the story of the guy with colon cancer, who he lived longer. I mean, he's since passed, but his chemotherapy started working because we dealt with the fusobacterium that was in his mouth and gone to colonized in his gut. And, the Cancer Institute was shocked. Oh, the chemo's working now. Well, it was all because of dealing with his mouth. And anyway, you're so right, Deb. You've got to go in and just say, this is what I want. I'm putting in here, go to Dr. Debbie Ozment, to the shop tab, then to Bristle Health, and that will show you how to get to that test with the discount. I'm not that good.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
Okay.
Then I think it says Toby Line, but that's Paula. You're on mute.
Hi guys.
Though.
Yes,
There you go.
yes. Hi, Dr. Debbie. I've seen you at Dr. Davis's before. Thank you so much for the presentation. And I have a question about this DNA test. Is it the same like the saliva test? Because this is what has been done on me.
Yes, and there's several forms of it. They're kind of swish tests, swish and spit it back into the tube. There's oral
Exactly.
DNA, there's Bristle Health, there's quite a few now. But
It has been done in the office of the dentist. That is for deep cleaning. And unfortunately, I had 4 of the bacteria in a very high end up at the time, and they had to remove a tooth, etc. But I kind of postponing the deep cleaning, which which I should do. And the question that I ask you is because last time here on Martha, we had another dentist, and he kind of elaborated on the test, the saliva test. And he explained that the saliva test is not so good because it gives you only the feeling of what you have in your saliva, not in your mouth, basically. Meaning you eat, it goes to the gut.
not the biofilms on the teeth themselves. I
Right,
think, yeah.
nothing on the tongue, nothing on the cheeks. You don't know much. And he said that this can vary very much. So, I mean, if you take it regularly, you'll see different numbers every time.
Well, I think it's, I don't think there's any perfect test yet, but I think it's a great starting point. And what I see clinically is pretty phenomenal. And there again, I think we just have to say this is progress, and maybe something good will come out later. Now, if you're dealing with the bacteria that are in your saliva are from that biofilm. They are from those deep crevices. They're that they're in the saliva because they're in your mouth. They're on the tongue. They're in the saliva because they're on your tongue. So while there could always be maybe a more perfect test, it might be $3,000 instead. I don't know, but it's a start somewhere. And I think in the meantime, if you don't have your deep cleaning yet, get some brush picks and get some black seed oil. I mean, any progress is going to help your body. Your body is designed to heal. Anytime you can get rid of some inflammation, you're going to feel better.
Yeah, well, the test was taken actually when I was completely inflamed with infection in my mouth. So they had to remove the tooth, etc. So do you think it's worth taking the test before I go for deep cleaning or the other way around?
Well, I think it depends on what your mouth looks like. I mean, if they can.
I don't have any bleeding and I use those toothpicks all the time. And sometimes the oxygen. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not bad.
It's just information, and then you just have to go with what your clinician, sees in your mouth and put those together. It's not one thing; it's the whole picture of all the different points of information.
Right. But I would say if you already know that you had those pathogens in your mouth and you've been working on it and you're planning to get a deep cleaning, I don't know that you're going to learn a lot more by having another test before you do the deep cleaning. I would just go ahead and do the deep cleaning and then do a test after that. So then you'll know that all the things together have made the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there is a complicated protocol, and unfortunately this fantastic dentist moved to a different city in Florida, so I don't know who took after her, but her protocol was fantastic. Everything that we're talking about here, she incorporates the BioGaia 2 products, the other stuff, the cleaning with the 2 things, I forgot, Aura something. I mean, she was on top of the things, but she's not available anymore. So I have to go and check what is the office doing. I'm cleaning my teeth regularly every 6 months. So I wonder, is it worth going, because it's very expensive actually to do the deep cleaning, or 6 months every, it's enough?
I think only you can decide that. From my perspective, I'm going to say go get a deep cleaning. If they're telling you need it, you probably need it. And
yeah,
I think
I would say that too. Just because I do think that made a difference for John, and probably for me too, even though I didn't feel like I had a problem or I was sick. But I think both of us doing that, it did make a difference for us. So
I'm so glad.
Yeah. What about the person that is doing it? Does it? How do I research if she's good or not? Can she harm me with this laser? Or I don't know. It's not that big of a deal. Everybody can do it.
Yeah, you might just read the reviews. I don't know how to speak to that.
Okay. So is it a complicated procedure, or every regular hygienist can do it?
It's not
You're trained.
Sorry?
Aren't you? You're trained to do it, right, Debbie? I mean, so they go to special training to learn. So they're not just like running out and buying a machine and starting to do brain surgery on you.
right.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. Thank you so much. Very appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Bella. Bob, it looks like you have one more question. Or
Yeah, quick follow-up. So let's say I do a stool test and then I have some high-risk pathogens that have colonized my gut bacteria. What's next? To Debbie's point, like, what do I do?
Yeah, if based on your mouth, you might need a deep cleaning. You might need if you have a root canal that's bad, you might need a root canal tooth removed. I mean, I'm giving you, worst case scenario.
I do have a slight fracture in one of my teeth, and my dentist for like the last 5 years doesn't want to do anything to it. Says it's fine, but it's a slight fracture. But I always worry, as I get into my blood system, anything bacteria.
Yeah, if it's just fractured, it's probably not doesn't have bacteria seriously attached. But if you're, depending on your general health and what your gut says, what your gut test is, your stool test, you might need to, change some lifestyle things, Bob. You might need to even take some metronidazole when you have your deep cleaning, depending on what the levels of the bacteria are.
I do everything by the book. I'm like Dr. Davis, 100, down the line. I don't move that bar. Thank you, Sugar Shift. I think I gave you a really good review on the website because in toxemia, my small fractured LDL was going up and down, and that stabilized. So I'm just trying to figure out the last pieces of the puzzle here. Back to Debbie's point, what do I do? I'm trying really hard to figure that out. But it's a puzzle.
Well, the shifting of the gut microbiome, and I mean, that's sort of one of the things, like Debbie's talking very much about the mouth. Dr. Magarino's talked more about toxins and the gut. They're interrelated, but if you have this very heavy burden of toxic load, either in your food or environmentally, dealing with that in your gut microbiome is going to be an important part of also impacting your oral health. And that was one of the things I actually went and found a paper after Geraldo talked to us, and I sent it to Debbie and Gail because he was talking about I think it was the bile acid recycling certain things into the salivary glands that were basically feeding the oral microbiome. And I found this really interesting paper. And so, these things are very interconnected, but, it sounds like, you're taking the steps with Dr. Davis's diet, which we know has huge impacts on people's health. And you're taking the steps looking at your mouth. So, we're empowering ourselves by taking all of these little steps, and together, that's what is putting us on a better health trajectory. And so, maybe it's not perfect yet, but all these little steps that you're taking are building on a better foundation for your overall health. And as you sort of tick off, each one of these little sources of inflammation, you're going to start enabling your immune system to even be able to handle that detoxification and all of those things better and better. So, we can get obsessive about trying to micromanage the microbiome profile. And, one of the things I like to say, like, they're all there, the good and the bad. And we talk about them good and the bad, but it's really that terrain, and the terrain that we're building with this, healthy lifestyle, healthy food, healthy choices that enables that microbiome to, keep the bad guys in check and clean up the problems in a timely fashion so that we don't build up to, poor health. That's sort of my perspective anyway.
No, that is a great point. And to that, like you said, everything's there. There was a new saliva test that came out that rivals oral DNA. So they delivered a test to me, in fact, and said, see what you think about this. So I did an oral DNA and I did that test. Well, that test it showed all these bacteria that I knew I didn't have, that, everybody has these things at low levels, but there's thresholds, and the lines are not the same thresholds, that they shouldn't even show up. Those red bacteria should not even show up in your mouth. But it's because this new saliva test had too many, what I'm trying to say, Mike, too many iterations, too many cycles when they ran it. So they were getting these outrageously high bacterial profiles on everybody that were, terrifying. But it was a bad test. You see what I'm saying?
So actually, that's a great point, and I'll make I'll give as an example of that the COVID test.
Exactly.
And I don't know how many of you are familiar, but so when they do that test, they're basically they use a number of cycles to make copies of the DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, the person who invented PCR, which is what is used for this sort of thing, said, this is not designed for diagnostics. And so the higher number of cycles you run, the more likely you are to get a sequence match. And so there was a lot of controversy at one point on the COVID test because they were running these cycles at, say, 45 to 50 cycles, which is way above what you would normally run. Maybe you might run like 30 cycles or 30 to 35 cycles. And so you're going to get something because you're running it, you're making so many copies. And I know that's probably not that easy to understand if you don't look at genetics, but it's basically like, running a Xerox machine, and, you start to get artifacts in the, because there's a smudge on the screen of the thing where you're running the paper through. I don't know if that was a good analogy or not, Debbie, but.
No, that's a great analogy. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's why you have to be careful doing all this testing. And that's one of my big questions with the bristle test. I interviewed Danny Granick, one of the developers, and they are real careful because you don't want to get a test done and it's like, oh, you have this. Then the stress takes over. No, you want something like, are these numbers actually correlated with systemic inflammation, systemic disease in any way? So I know that oral DNA, they're really careful. They're excellent. And I know that the bristle test, there's other tests out there, but some of the other tests that they've sent me, as myself, they're just not legitimate. You have to be careful. You have to be discerning.
Well, and that's, one of the bigger challenges with microbiome testing, because again, it's a point in time, just like a blood test is a point in time, and you can change your microbiome by your diet in a relatively short period of time. So at least up to this point, most of the microbiome testing does not have good actionable steps that you can take. Other than kind of global steps you would be taking anyway to address lifestyle and dietary changes. So I just kind of throw that out because we used to do, when we were collecting our stool bank, we used to do this very detailed microbiome testing. And I mean, I love the data because I can get in there and look at connections across diseases and do all this stuff, but I'm deeply trained in looking at that type of stuff. And what happened was we were given these tests to, people who provided us a sample, and then they're running off, taking them to a doctor whose eyes are crossing and going like, what is this? I don't, I've never even heard of most of these species of bacteria. So, and I tell people all the time, like, we are more microbial than we are human, and they are performing all these functions for us. And in some cases, even those pathogens in small amounts are there performing some kind of a function because of the environment that's there. So if we focus on healthy lifestyle and addressing what we know is going to make us healthier by healthier choices, we're going to be better off in the long run.
Right. And for a group like you all who are already A+, overachievers, it's so different than somebody I see who, thinks that a healthy breakfast is Fruit Loops and, low-fat milk. So, they have bloating or they have these problems. And so they see a stool test and there's actionable things I give them. And here's why this is here, out of whack. So it's very actionable for them. Say for you all, like for you, Bob, if you were concerned that maybe, colorectal cancer is maybe in your family and you're concerned, then we would look at Fusobacterium, or we might find Giardia. We might find, a parasite or a pathogen. Somebody who's been on a trip to Cancun comes back and they're like, I've been sick. We see what's going on so that we can specifically treat that. That makes a difference. But for people who you're already doing everything like awesome, may not even be worth spending the money.
But, I will say, I mean, I don't mean to say, no, don't ever do a stool test, because I do think they can be meaningful, but you do have to have a physician practitioner who will work with you and understand and can help you address. So, we did find a parasite in John's samples, in all those time series samples. And we did have an internist who was open-minded. I took him the test. He'd never seen anything like it before. I took him, a stack of academic papers showing how, the parasite that we found was correlated with Parkinson's. And he said, I'm willing to try. And he prescribed Bactrim, and John took Bactrim, and we definitely saw some improvement. So I'm not saying that you can't have results that way, but it does take a physician or dental partner who can help, work through that, because getting it yourself and then trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to deal with this if you don't have a physician who can help you specifically target something, you could actually make things worse.
Mm-hmm. And you don't want someone who's just going to sell you, 50 pills to take, 50 bottles of stuff. That's kind of a new trend. So
right.
Good.
Thank you for the education. Thanks everyone for sharing.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for coming tonight. And I always love having Debbie, and I learned so much from Debbie and Gail. And Gail is my fermented food buddy who teaches me about the kefir and the kefir grains. So I'm very grateful to her. She was pretty quiet tonight. I just thank everybody for coming and appreciate you for being part of this and for taking control of your own health by learning and being a part of this community. So
Thank you. Enjoy to be with you.
See you again in 2 weeks.
Thank you very much. See you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.